Everyone is speaking out about this. As Chris Drury's plan this offseason continues to take shape, the plan looks like it actually expands past this year. We're going to break down what that means and how the Rangers could find themselves acquiring a franchise-altering superstar, one of the best players who's ever played the game. We're going to break down how this could happen and why it's a real possibility, and the Oilers should watch out. We're going to break it all down in this episode of Rangers Digest. But before we do that, a quick reminder to hit that subscribe button. About 74% of you who watch these videos on the regular are not actually subscribed to the channel. So if you want to stay up to date with everything that's happening with your New York Rangers, go down below, hit that free subscribe button, because this is the place to be for all your daily New York Rangers content. But there's been a lot happening around the league with the Stanley Cup finally being awarded, Bret. And one talking point that everyone is speaking about right now after his postseason media availability is Connor McDavid and whether or not he's going to be staying in Edmonton. And let me just start it off. We're going to start off with a hot take right here. I can see Connor McDavid becoming a New York Ranger. I don't know if he's going to resign in Edmonton. We're going to break it down. And this was a very interesting quote from Joshua Deeds of the New York Rangers Insider. And not just a quote, a very interesting article that he put together. And there's a couple quotes that I think are very shocking if you're an Oilers fan watching this, that, you know, make me believe that he could be moving on. And Connor McDavid went on to say that it's only been a couple of days since the season ended. He's going to take some time to regroup, talk to his agent and to his family and all of that, and make some decisions whenever that time comes. And obviously he has a year still to make that decision, right? He's still signed through next summer, but he goes on to say there's no rush or anything like that. And that was from Connor McDavid. And you know, Joshua says here, it does sound like hesitation to me. And he also went on to say that he's still processing the loss to the Florida Panthers. And another interesting quote from him is that this year he's not heartbroken or sad. He's actually more angry. And I feel like he's angry because the Oilers did not go out and get the necessary pieces that the team needed to be able to get over the hump and beat the Florida Panthers. And again, all credit to the Florida Panthers. Great team. But Bret, how do you feel about this? I feel like the doors are wide open at this point. If the Oilers do not make the necessary moves needed this offseason, Connor McDavid will be leaving, and I feel like the Rangers, Chris Drury, are going to be standing right there at the door to welcome him in with whatever he wants.
The door is absolutely wide open, Darius. And like you said, Chris Drury will do whatever it takes. If James Dolan has to, fly out there himself and bring Connor McDavid to Madison Square Garden from Edmonton, he will absolutely do that. Look, McDavid, 2 years in a row now making the Stanley Cup and coming up short. And like you said, he looked sad that first time against Florida. This year, he looked angry. You could see it
Yep.
in his body language. You could see it in his post-game press conference. He just looks, even in this quote right here, he says, we kept effing trying the same thing over and over again, and nothing seemed to work. And the reason nothing seemed to work is because this is who Edmonton is. It's Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl, and then when Nugent Hopkins, was dealing with that hand injury, you saw what happened, Darius. They
Yep.
got completely outclassed, and the goalie situation is a complete mess. And we're going to get into this later on, but the Rangers, on the other hand, don't have a goaltending issue. It's actually one of the most secure positions on the team. The Rangers need to do a lot of work outside of that, but their goaltender is certainly an all-world goaltender, and I'm sure Connor McDavid would love to play in front of a guy like that. So it is absolutely wide open, Darius, because I don't believe Edmonton is getting back to the Stanley Cup final this year. I don't see it. The team isn't going to be as good. And look, Leon Draisaitl went on a all-world type of run this postseason. I mean, he was
Yeah.
scoring overtime goals, which it seemed like every other night. So he was unbelievable. Leon, really love him. But look, I don't see them getting back. And the Western Conference is absolutely loaded. It is so loaded. I understand that Florida's in the Eastern Conference. You got to get through Florida. But look, the Western Conference is loaded. We just saw Colorado, a team that's not too far removed from a Stanley Cup themselves, get bounced in the first round. So I just don't see Edmonton getting back this year. And it's only going to, if he was sad last year, angry this year, I can only imagine what he's going to be this upcoming season if they don't even make the Stanley Cup. So it is absolutely wide open, Darius, until he puts that pen to paper at least.
Absolutely. And if he does not sign a contract extension before next season begins, the questions are going to start coming. And I feel like he, at that point, would probably already made up his mind. I mean, if he does not sign this offseason with the necessary, like if the Oilers don't make the necessary moves, and we'll get into some of those specifics in a second too, he will leave. He absolutely will leave. The winning is the most important thing to him, and his legacy and the legacy that he leaves, after he retires. He wants to win championships. That's the most important thing. And I feel like there's a lot of teams, like we've been discussing, including the Rangers, that will, give him whatever he wants and build the team around him. I wanted to get into this quote from Connor McDavid as well. This was from the postseason availability too. And he said that this core has been together for a long time and we've been building to this moment. With that being said, ultimately, I still need to do what's best for me and my family. But of course, there's unfinished business here. And that kind of plays into like what you said. The Western Conference is so stacked. The Oilers have been, making it to Stanley Cup Finals the last 2 years in a row. And there is unfinished business there. He is still signed for one season. He's not going to request a trade. He's going to finish the next season with the Edmonton Oilers and try to win a Stanley Cup. But I can see him leaving at the end of next season, again, if they don't make the necessary moves. And a necessary move, like you alluded to, is a goaltender. If you look at all the advanced analytics, goaltending was the deciding factor in the Stanley Cup final. Of course, the Florida Panthers are a great team, but if the Oilers had a bona fide number one starter that could make a difference like that, that would have been the difference in that final. And you know who has a world-class goaltender, Bret? The New York Rangers have a world-class goaltender. So I feel like McDavid's going to look at some of the biggest market teams, who's going to be able to build a team around him or willing to do that, and who has some of the best goaltenders in the league. So how do you feel about that? Because I feel like that will be one of the deciding factors on if he leaves and where he goes.
Oh, it is absolutely a factor, Darius. And what I love is that, no big surprise here. Once again, defense and goaltending wins the Stanley Cup. I mean, Sergei Bobrovsky is in another class than what Edmonton has to offer. So, a lot of people say, well, Florida doesn't have a player as good as Connor McDavid or Leon Draisaitl. No, but they have a very good team. They have very good defense, and they have, honestly, we can call Sergei Bobrovsky an elite goaltender at this point. I mean, they won back-to-back Stanley Cup Finals. He is a very, very good goaltender. And the Rangers have one of them themselves. They've got Igor Shesterkin, who, quite frankly, keeps the Rangers alive in these postseason series. When, I spoke about Artemi Panarin yesterday. The guy has been fantastic since he's been a New York Ranger, but he has never once led the New York Rangers in postseason point scoring. And that is a problem. That is a big problem because it seems like Igor Shesterkin is always carrying this team on his back throughout these playoffs. And look, the Rangers, I said that defense and goaltending won once again in the Stanley Cup final. The Rangers have some work to do here on defense. We all know that. That is no secret. But luckily for the Rangers, they have cap space not only this season, but they have a ton of cap space next offseason, which is going to be extremely crucial because the Rangers are one of the few teams that would be able to bring in a Connor McDavid, but surround him with the necessary pieces. The problem with Edmonton is they don't have that necessary depth, those necessary pieces. Now, we're going to get into what the Rangers could offer besides Igor Shesterkin, but I just want to start off by saying the Rangers have a fourth line, an identity fourth line, which they could present to Connor McDavid, an all-class world goaltender, like you just mentioned, Igor Shesterkin, a head coach who has done it, unlike Edmonton's head coach, and he's done a great job there. But the Rangers have a head coach who has done it, who has proven it, who's won 2 Stanley Cup championships. Not only that, but he coached a superstar like Sidney Crosby. So there is no doubt that Mike Sullivan has the guts, has what it takes to communicate with a superstar player like a Connor McDavid, because we've seen him do it before. So you got the head coach, you got the goalie, you got the identity fourth line. What the Rangers are going to need, Darius, is to develop this defense, which we're going to be continuing to make videos about on how they could do that. And they're going to also have to find a replacement for Artemi Panarin next season. And there are a few intriguing options next year as well that you could pair with a Connor McDavid. And like I said, the Rangers are fortunate enough to have that cap space. And Darius, I know you're going to get into this in just a second. If they're able to move Mika somehow, some way, force him to move that no trade clause, that'll open up the floodgates even more. But even if he doesn't, Darius, the Rangers are still in good shape financially.
Absolutely. And if you were to bring in a Connor McDavid, yes, the lineup would look different. Maybe you look at moving Mika Zibanejad for sure next season, next offseason. Maybe you even look at moving Trocheck, right? And then maybe you move Zibanejad to the wing. And Zibanejad this season should probably be on the wing anyway, but that's a different, we can talk about that in a different video. But like you mentioned, a lot of people like to talk about the salary and the salary cap. How would it work? The salary cap, like I just showed, I mean, it's not going to stay this way, but right now, next season, they have a projected $43 million of cap space. They can sign Connor McDavid to whatever he asks for. Artemi Panarin is coming off the books. You're going to have that salary freed up. Obviously, you can make some different moves if you want, like you alluded to. We're going to have a video on that as well and who they can add in that spot. But they're going to have a ton of cap space they can work with. You have your all-star, world-beating goaltender, whatever you want to call it, at this point. And that is, enticing for a superstar like Connor McDavid. You have the goaltender, like you alluded to, assuming they sign Adam Edstrom, which I think is coming up after Will Cooley. You have the identity fourth line, which was great at times last season. You have a coach who's done it with a superstar in Sidney Crosby. He's been there. He's won a Stanley Cup. And it's the New York Rangers. Why wouldn't you want to play for the New York Rangers, right? So I think it just makes sense. He also went on to say that he's going to be talking about everything with his agent, what makes sense, and if he can actually get over the hump in Edmonton, which right now, it is hard to get to the Stanley Cup final 1 year. It is so hard to get back to the Stanley Cup final 3 years in a row. I don't know if it's going to happen, but one thing is for sure, if the Rangers are able to get this player, he is franchise altering. Absolutely franchise altering, and I feel like if you were to add a player like this, the rest of the lineup would all of a sudden make a lot of sense. But there's going to be a lot of moves in the meantime. We're going to get into those. We're going to have a bunch of other videos as well. But Bret, any final thoughts on this? It looks like Connor McDavid could be hitting free agency next offseason.
Well, my final thoughts are this graphic that you just pulled up there that you put together. I mean, if you take a look at that graphic, he is a near perfect hockey player. I mean, it is video game-like. He is franchise altering, like you said, Darius. And I'm going to tease something real quick because, we've spoken about the cap space and the Rangers have a lot of it. There are a couple free agents next year as well that you can pair with a Connor McDavid because they are on the same timeline as him in terms of age. And they are also like him, star players. Well, Connor's in a different tier, superstar, but they have not won a Stanley Cup. There are two players in particular I'm talking about. There's one on the left wing, one on the right wing. You could pair Connor McDavid with either one of these players I'm talking about, and it would be a match made in heaven on that first line for the New York Rangers. And guys, the Rangers are able to do it. They have the cap space to do it. So they need to be extremely careful this offseason, guys. That's why I've been so low on Gavrikov and Provorov. We'll have more videos on that. But they have to be very, very careful if they want to bring in McDavid plus another star. Not a superstar, but another star that you could replace Panarin with, put him on that first line. It would be absolutely amazing, guys. And the door is absolutely wide open. He also has two guys he could talk to, Darius, who have done it before, have been in similar situations, Mark Messier and Wayne Gretzky. If he would want any advice on how to transition from Edmonton to New York and how to get it done in the Big Apple, how to win the big one, those are the two guys he can talk to right there. So McDavid on Broadway, it's absolutely possible.
Absolutely, and I think that's a great point. Two of the best players who've ever played the game have done the exact same thing that Connor McDavid has the opportunity to do. Obviously, Wayne Gretzky not winning a Stanley Cup in New York, but the same thing. Was successful in Edmonton, went to multiple Stanley Cup finals, moved on to the New York Rangers. Mark Messier finally bringing a Stanley Cup to the New York Rangers. Connor McDavid could follow the same path. And again, I feel like the Rangers have so much to offer at this point to a player like this. You have the goaltender, you have the coach now, you have, the bottom six. I feel like they're still kind of working out moves, and, there's a lot of more obvious moves on the way too, like a Will Cooley, but we will keep you covered for that on the channel. But Connor McDavid could be a New York Ranger next season. Let us know how you feel about that in the comments, and we will see you for another video tomorrow.